What exactly happened to Haley in this race? It just seems like she struggled at Richmond.
Well, what happened was she had an electrical issue in the closing laps, and her race vlog is something that ends pretty abruptly. Doesn't really go into detail of what exactly happened. It just shows her losing power and the team bringing her into the pits. The race results say she was running at the finish, 9 laps down. Obviously, the issue taking her out of contention for the positions that she was running for. I think trying to break into the top 20 at certain points during the race. So right around where she started. But yeah, certainly an unfortunate deal. And again, with how abruptly that vlog ended, I've got to think, we're getting to the point where a couple months into the season now, probably frustration starting to settle in here as we're about to talk about with where she is in the point standings.
A little bit of frustration and something you got to consider joining brand new team for her in the Xfinity rookie season. I just feel like that frustration is starting to boil over, especially since there's a lot of pressure from Ford for her to perform. It just seems like it's been a rough start because right now, 29th in the point stand. It's actually sure she was making some progress. 29th, that's not exactly that great. And we're going to Martinsville, where it's a short track. Depending on the tire wear and the tire degradation, you might see some opportunities for strategy, but this race at the same time, it's a bit of an equalizer. You're not reliant on the aerodynamics. Handling, that could be a factor, but not as big as, say, a Texas Motor Speedway or another track, a mile and a half oval. So is this a good opportunity for her to have a good race and potentially rebound after the disappointment of essentially something beyond her control, taking her out of contention for a good finish?
Yeah, it could be an opportunity. But to that point, Joe, obviously, Martinsville's a short track where you see a lot more beating and banging, particularly in this series here in Xfinity. You can only think back to what happened in the playoffs last fall to see proof of that. So it is easy to get caught up in somebody else's mess. It's easy to get caught up in a mess of your own doing as well. Look, I just pulled up her results from a truck series to look back at, what kind of little reference point that we have. 19th, 19th, and 20th in her 3 starts in trucks here at Martinsville. So fairly consistent results there. I would imagine that somewhere around there, again, Xfinity Fields being a little bit larger in car count, that would be a decent day for her, and probably, again, right where we would expect her to be running based on where her pace was at Richmond before the electrical issue.
And one of the things, too, Martinsville, that's a tough track. But listen to some of the tracks we got coming up for the Xfinity Series. Texas Motor Speedway, that's a track with a big emphasis on handling because of the different turn 1s and 2 compared to 3 or 4. Talladega, potential to win there, but at the same time, you get caught up in the big one, you're out of it. Dover, the Monster Mile, that requires a lot of handling, taking care of the tires. That's going to be really something else. And then the Lady in Black, Darlington Raceway, the track too tough to tame. How brutal is this stretch for all the drivers? Because we got Hailie Deegan, we got a lot of big names in this Xfinity Series that this is a handful, including Martinsville this weekend.
Yeah, it's a brutal stretch, but it's also a critical stretch for Hailie Deegan in particular, and I'll tell you why. She had 5 top 10s in the truck series for the last 3 years. 3 of those 5 came at Texas and Talladega. She got 1 at Texas in the spring of last year, and then the last 2 times she was in the truck series at Talladega, finished 6th and 8th in 22 and 23 respectively. So, those could be opportunities for her to put in a good run and have a good showing. But then, like you mentioned, Joe, we go to Dover, and might surprise some folks, but as soon as Hailie Deegan entered the truck series, that was the year of it. Dover fell off of the truck schedule. They haven't been at Dover for a few years now. And, of course, when she raced K&N, she primarily raced in the West Series, the K&N Pro Series West. Never ran any of the East races at Dover. So this, to my knowledge, is actually going to be her first race at Dover Motor Speedway, or formerly Dover International Speedway. So obviously Dover's a challenging track to begin with. But if you have little to no experience there, it only compounds that difficulty level. And then Darlington, like you mentioned, Joe, one of the most challenging tracks and uniquely shaped tracks we go to on the circuit. So it's a difficult stretch, but it's a critical stretch because I think there's a couple opportunities for her to go out there and have a good run at tracks where she's run strongly before in the truck series. But also some unfamiliar territory for her. And then, obviously, every track that you just mentioned presents its own unique challenges. So it's a critical stretch.
Very critical. And the one thing I'm wondering at Talladega, considering what happened in Daytona where she was out early, that lack of experience in a super speedway environment, do you think that's going to be something of a big disadvantage? Or do you think, considering she also had Atlanta, maybe it's not too big of a disadvantage? The big thing is just drafting, learning the ropes, because Talladega, things could go her way and she gets a good finish, but it could easily go really badly too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a wild card. You can think back to her ARCA debut at Daytona when she finished second. I think Deegan knows how to run in the draft if she's given the right opportunity and given a strong enough car and is able to stay out of trouble. I think, she's going to have the opportunity to work her way up. So, of course, it would have been great to get more experience in the Xfinity car Daytona earlier this year, to have a stronger run at Atlanta, which, again, doesn't quite resemble Talladega as much as Daytona does, but still certainly has some overlap after the reconfiguration. So, that would have been a nice to have, I think. But I think when you look at, obviously, like I just mentioned, she has 2 top 10s here in 3 races in the Truck Series and has run strong at Daytona before in the ARCA platform. I think that, it's something that she's going to be able to overcome from not having that in February. And potentially it's probably going to be her best opportunity to go out there and have a strong run where she could potentially contend for the win if everything goes her way.